I am Roni Haskell, otherwise known as That SC Real Estate Chick, and this is For the Love of Real Estate podcast. I'm joined today by the town of Summerville's strong leader, Chief Doug Wright. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so tell me about the leadership within the town of Summerville. You're the chief. You got a lot of a lot of different personnel underneath you. How do you manage all those different personalities?
It's actually my specialty. My favorite thing to do is lead. I don't even call it management. I lead people, and I lead personalities, like you said. So one personality is enticed by for altruistic, reward or whichever it is. You just got to manage or lead that person, knowing that you can't lead two of the same people or two different people the same way.
Yeah.
We have the same mission and the same cause, but the way you do it might be a different way than I would do it. As long as we're not breaking the law or policy, you just found a different way to get it done. So recognizing that instead of telling them, no, you're not going to do it that way, you're going to do it this way. There's more than one way to skin a cat. So, really personalities is important because in law enforcement, a lot of type A personalities, right? You have people who feel like they're authoritarian type people. They don't like to be told they're wrong. They've always got to be first place. They hate to lose. That type of personality. And there's outspoken, extrovert, and you also have introvert of the same type of personality. So having everybody together for a common goal and theme and knowing that we're going to accomplish the mission however it gets done, as long as it's done right, is important. And the big thing that we've really, you'll actually like this metaphor, if you will, but we don't like renters. We want homeowners. So what we talk about is, people who are invested in the community. They're paying for their house. They're not renting the house. Yeah. They're going to take care of the house. And then you build a community in a neighborhood based off of that. But if you have people who rent, I'm not making fun of renters because there's really good renters out there. Yeah. But it's kind of like when you're a kid in high school and your dad gives you a brand new Corvette. You're not going to take care of the brand new Corvette. You know the kids you went to school with. They had new stuff and they were trashing their car and doing all that. And then I went and worked hard all summer for 4 years and bought a car. I took better care of it.
It's having equity in it.
Equity.
That's
exactly.
the word.
Yeah. So that's what we do.
So you can take that back to your team.
I like it. Yeah.
They put equity, into it, but it's building this team of ownership. So it's not just as a leader, right? It's not just one person on top and everybody else is under. No, you as a leader, what do they say? We lead from the back, right? We kind of allow other people the liberty to shine and to be able. I'm sure you have different forms of leadership, even over each of the different components, over the different departments, and so leading those personalities and just leading the people to their successes.
Exactly.
So that's what you do.
Precisely.
They get to put equity into their ownership.
I love it. Yeah, we don't want people who are just going to be on holdover. They're here just for a short period of time because they're not going to be invested in the community either.
Yeah, that's right. It's not just a job. It's
Right.
It's they're pouring themselves into it, just
Absolutely.
as you
I love
have.
that. Yeah.
What builds a strong community to you, in your opinion?
The people.
Yeah.
It's the people, 100%.
Yeah. So how do you integrate the police influence into the community to strengthen it and the presence and of course we understand the safety aspect of it, but talk to us more about really the influence that the police department can have.
So we have to be a replica of our population and who we police. So our challenge has been in this profession to get good people. And we've been very blessed to be in the town of Summerville because we're actually it's an attraction for a lot of people that are coming from afar to move here. So obviously we are very heavily involved in the community here as a police department, very community oriented. And we make it a point to go out of our way to shake hands, say hello, hold doors for people. And that Southern hospitality, as you would say, is alive and well here. So we like to extend that to through our police officers to the community.
You've been integrated in this community for a long time. When did you join the police force here?
I came here in 1997. I actually, I'm a James Island boy. I grew up over there.
Yeah.
So I always tell people, and they laugh, but the only time I ever came to Summerville was to lose in sports. A three-letter athlete. So I always came to Summerville as back then it was considered a long ride.
Yeah.
I-26 was smaller. It was a 2-lane road coming into Summerville, and you drove to this football stadium that's nestled in between the trees. And then all of a sudden, just all these people come out of the woodwork to watch the sports here. And then it was a long ride home. And
presumably that y'all
so we
lost.
Yes. Usually that was the case. In fact, almost always.
Yes.
But what I admired about Summerville then that is still the same now is how tranquil it is.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I always looked at how clean it was. The grass is cut. The trash is not on the street. A lot of the things that you want to see when you think of a picture book type neighborhood town, that's what Summerville is. So I hated leaving the salt water, being down in Charleston and smelling that salt there and the fluff mud. But coming up here, you have the pine trees, the azaleas. Obviously, it's just a great place.
So low country by nature, born and bred in the low country.
I was born in New Jersey, but don't hold it against me. I'm just kidding.
Well, I sell a lot of real estate to people from northern states, and they are migrating here. Yeah. But you described perfectly the setting for which people love to migrate here because of. Just a couple of weeks ago, I had some friends and some clients coming in from Queens, New York, and they said the same thing, like, don't hold it against me. But quite frankly, there's been a lot of growth within the Dorchester County area, but specifically town of Summerville. I looked back into the census. I was selling real estate in Summerville exclusively, even in 2010. And but I looked back into the population. We had 43,400 residents in Summerville at the time. And then I looked at 2020, and we had 50,900. So that's a 15% growth in the town of Summerville within a 10-year span. What challenges have you been faced with that kind of growth?
So it's good. It's actually a good question. I'll tell you why, because we as a town as the town government are trying to keep it that small town feel, tranquil, southern town, if you will. But we have to grow at times, and we're doing that. And there's a little bit of unfortunateness here, and that is the roads weren't built to withstand the amount of population we're seeing right now. So we're a little bit behind on the transportation part of it. But the people here, I think, for the most part, were kind of pessimistic, if you will, about people coming from so many places to move here. But I think that's changing, because what used to be an older population in the town of Summerville has now become a much younger generation of people who are living here. And so that it's very attractive to come here because it's safe. We have great parks, great schooling in District 2 schools. Obviously, Berkeley County has good schools too. And, what I tell people, even though we're probably in the mid 50 range of population right now, we police about 250,000 people, because 29483 is a Summerville zip code. It's the most populous zip code in South Carolina. And I believe 29485 is the third most populous. So there's 4 Summerville zip codes. And we're policing those people because they're coming here to eat. They're coming here to shop. They're coming here to go to their worship centers. And so we want to keep all those people safe. And that's police and fire. We're really big on public safety here in Summerville. And
we have a lot within the town of Summerville that attracts people. You were talking about the downtown area and just the landscaping, but we have tons of festivals. And it seems like Dream is a wonderful community resource that really does it draws people into the downtown Summerville area, which with that, I would imagine brings its own levels of challenges and such that y'all face. But what really impresses me is how it's not just police enforcement. You guys do a lot of service within the community outside of just the interactions of your law enforcement details, right? So tell us about that. How do you pull your team over into the service side?
So we have obviously a lot of uniform officers, but they're assigned to different tasks. Obviously, we have officers assigned to patrol who patrolling your streets. They're responding to calls for service. We have a traffic unit that obviously is out enforcing and handling traffic collisions and whatnot. We have several different units within the agency, but our hospitality team, as we call it, we set them up 2 years ago at a hospitality tax, and we have officers assigned to this team. There's 5 of them, and basically what they do is they police and help the merchants in town. So they've been very helpful when it comes to dealing with shoplifters or panhandlers or different things like that. But what they also do very well is they attend a lot of community functions. So community crime watch meetings. Obviously, you were talking about the different festivals and different things. We have we created or we repurposed a vehicle, a bread truck, and made a paddy wagon, which is an ice cream truck. And so we take that through the
Neat.
neighborhoods and give away free ice cream to the kids, play the siren and the music. And so we do a lot of cool things like that. But yeah, we're very involved with the schools, a lot of their programs, a lot of the church programs around. We're constantly involved and engaged with that way. We also have a program that's called the Dignity Project that we stood up with the Coastal Crisis Chaplaincy Program. And basically, it's a grassroots effort for us to break down the walls between different races and ethnicities in law enforcement with the community. So that's something really huge that we're doing too.
So one thing I was recognizing, because you've got stats that are on your website for public reading and knowledge. Even though the town of Summerville has seen considerable growth in the last 10 years, I was quite impressed that really the level of
Crime.
fraud, yeah, well, it's just fraud and all the law enforcement that y'all are having to do. It really hasn't seen the same kind of level of growth that the population has. So I guess
Right.
what I'm saying is the population continues to grow in the town, but your team must be doing a fantastic job because the numbers haven't grown.
So one thing I've been very outspoken about in my time here is about proactive policing. And there's a way to be proactive and do it right, where you're not overly aggressive, but you could send the message through education and enforcement. So we do give second chances here as far as people who are doing wrong, depending on what it is. But we are very proactive in the quality of life type crimes because we feel like, obviously the broken windows theory is if you walk past a piece of trash and you don't pick it up, that you just acknowledge that piece of trash is okay to be there. So it's the same goes if I have a panhandler or someone who's public drunkenness. Those are the quality of life type issues that if we take care of, people feel more comfortable and have more pride in the town that they live in. So the proactive policing, instead of being reactive and just responding to the calls after they happen, we want to be out there and be seen and do what we need to do.
And the community involvement in your efforts, I think, is outstanding within Summerville as well. Because as a community, I do feel like people take great pride in where they live. Not just the people that have lived here for their whole lives. It's a generational kind of community. There's a lot of families that they've lived here, their children, grandchildren still continue to live in this, small town USA, so to speak. But we're talking about earlier the attraction for people moving here from out of state, and they too are coming here and continuing to take pride, is my perception. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah. In fact, I was with the police chief of Miami Police Department. He actually retired 2 years ago, this police chief. I was with him the other day, and he said that he has heard nothing but good things. This is Miami police chief telling us, I've heard nothing but good things about Summerville. That's the place to move to. It was very impressive that we were on the map with him. And so, having said that, I think everybody's kind of closing their eyes and putting their finger on the map, and it's showing, it's just ending up right here in the Charleston metropolitan area. And what a lot of people don't understand is they've said that Charleston will be the size of Jacksonville within 20 years. And I think that was 5 years ago.
Wow.
And then they said, untitled sources, that Summerville would actually become the epicenter of the Low Country. So what you think about is the moratorium and the different things that are going down in the Charleston. There's nowhere else to build. and unless you go to Ravenel or Allendale, McClellanville area, right?
Hmm.
Johns Island maybe, but everything's moving up here. You obviously have the moving up towards Ridgeville in the Summerville area. You have Volvo up there. They're widening the highway for that, and different things they're doing there. They have Walmart's distribution center up the road. So if they're saying that this is a very good place for people to employ people,
Yeah.
then obviously they know how hard South Carolinians work.
So you were talking just a while ago about the Miami police chief coming up here. I just was in Miami actually earlier this week. I get to do some travels.
Nice.
Let's get into a personal life of Chief for a minute. So do you get to travel with your family much?
I used to do it a lot. So I used to teach. I'm considered a subject matter expert for criminal interdiction. So I traveled around the entire country for a long time as a side gig
Yeah.
while being a police officer here. So I was able to take my wife and then my young kids with me on some of those different things. But you know what? I'm one of those people that doesn't use sick leave, don't use annual leave. I'm always here. I know there's times at the end of the year I have to burn my leave because I haven't used it. I just love coming to
Yeah.
work every day. But yeah, my hope is at one time when I eventually do retire, I'll actually get to do some of those things. But my wife was a professor at the College of Charleston, so we did some study abroad for a couple years, and that was really interesting because I got to go with the students and my wife, and we got to go to Europe and Africa and different things like that. So that was cool.
So when you travel, do you stay guarded?
Yep.
Do your eyes are out,
All,
right?
it's a cop thing.
Yeah.
People think we're kidding when we say that, but when we walk into a restaurant, we always sit where we can see the door.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing when we're off duty. When we're off, the things you see and the things you do, you're always watching. Your eyes are peeled. You're people watching. You're looking for bulges on people's clothing. I mean, the things that you're just trained to do, and you do it.
Yes.
And you take it with you.
Yes. Yes. Let's you talked a little bit about some of your past experience, but what I've read about you, and you can tell me if this is correct, K-9 unit, you've been involved with Marines for 6 years, graduate of the FBI National Academy. You've got quite an accomplishment under your
I'm
belt.
not done yet. I'm actually, I have 2.5 classes left for my master's. And just to tell you how it went, I was one of those kids that I had to fight really hard in school to make passing grades. I fought really hard. Like I said, I was an athlete, so I had to stay academically eligible. So it was really important to me. That was all I had in high school was my life with sports. So I wrestled, I played football and track. I was in chorus too. But I ended up going in the Marine Corps. I couldn't get the SAT score I wanted, and went in the Marine Corps Reserves. Worked at Charleston County Sheriff's Office as an animal control officer, then became a police officer. And I started an associate's degree. It took me 17 years to finish that. Went to the FBI Academy, came back and said, you know what, I could do this. So I went to my bachelor's, and now I'm at Liberty University finishing up a master's degree in executive leadership. So I hope to be done this year. But
Fantastic.
49 years old, and it's never too late to try to better yourself, right?
You never stop learning and growing.
Right.
But as a parent of some teenage girls, you've just given me hope because one doesn't make all the best grades. And so, but you've planted a seed of hope there that even though the grades they're not everything. I mean, it does matter, but you have paved the path for where you are today because of your diligence and your
Listen,
hard work.
I got to tell you something like this. That my only motivation was first I wanted to be a police chief, so I said I have to have a master's degree.
Yeah.
Well, I think since my town council had seen me continually educate myself, they gave me the pass on that because I was halfway through my degree then. But to me, just to be able to say you've accomplished that, something you can never take away. And we have a lot of police officers who have a lot of college and haven't finished. So we're trying to incentivize them by if you have a different degree or if you have military service, we will pay you a stipend for having a different level of degree. And it's to incentivize that. So
Who was one of your mentors? Who would you say is a mentor and why?
my dad, I know everybody's going to say their parent, but my dad was a police officer. He was a Marine. I knew at the age, a single digit age, that I was going to be a U.S. Marine and I was going to be a cop. My dad was a cop. He retired as a cop. And my entire career was really, I wanted to follow in his footsteps. And so he's first. Sheriff Al Cannon from Charleston County Sheriff's Office retired. I always looked up to him because he really was able to bring police departments and agencies together and to collaborate. Um, there's a lot of people, but obviously my mentors in the military, my wrestling and football coaches from high school. You know, when you're in sports, you're at practice every day.
Mhm.
Especially three-letter athlete, you're never off. You have summer in the summertime, you're at practice, but that's your dad. They're there parenting you through your entire
Yeah.
life when your dad's not around because you're there. So that very powerful role model for me was my coaches.
Nice. So really, it just goes to speak. We don't know who we're influencing. Well, we are. We're influencing everybody that's around us every day, and so we really have to take that with a lot of honor, but a lot of make sure that we have integrity in everything that we do as well. Tell me a little bit more about your dad. What would you say is like number one key element of life lessons that he taught you that you still carry with you?
Self-discipline. He was a drill instructor in the Marine Corps, so I grew up with that mentality. And you woke up on time, you made your bed, you weren't late to anything. You were early. If you're 15 minutes early or late. Um, just the way I dressed, I had to tuck my shirt in and wear a belt, so got made fun of and coming up through school. Always had my hair combed to the side. All these other kids were having styles. But I didn't know any different.
Yeah.
That's what I knew, and I had to work for my allowance. It was 45 cents a week,
Mhm.
and I mean the stuff that I had to do. And I had a brother and a sister as well. Early in life, so it's my self discipline. I think
Yeah.
is what's really and perseverance and never quitting. I've never quit anything. It's why I'm finishing my school at the age of 50 almost. Is
Yeah.
I just have an ethos in me about you never quit. So.
Yeah. And you had made mention to me before that you've got children
Yeah.
that are now, or you have two Marines?
Yeah, so I have one. My oldest one is 23, and he's just now getting out of the Marine Corps. He is now working at a local sheriff's office,
Okay.
following in my footsteps, I suppose. My middle son's 21, and he's a infantry Marine. And I have a 14-year-old daughter who is the apple of my eye. Um, she does no wrong.
Yeah.
My wife hates it.
I do have a 14-year-old, and talk about influence. They are social media, right? The influences of communication today with
Scary.
internet and social media, it's vastly different, not only for our teenagers, but just as a population as a whole. What would you say would be a challenge that you have that you've had to face from law enforcement, from the law enforcement side, what would you say has been a challenge that the social media has really posed on you and your team?
Um, the biggest thing with not dealing with children, but dealing with law enforcement, social media has really. I'll put it. I'll give you an example. Um, Something like you saw happen in Minnesota, um, where the gentleman was murdered by the police officers. I say the old days, but literally 15 years ago, you would read about that in the paper maybe 2, 3, 4 days later if it was in another state, or you may never hear of it at all.
Mm.
We were able to see that happening in real time. I mean, within minutes, it was being live broadcasted and simulcasted around the world. And so that is one thing we're having to deal with now is real time. People live streaming their crime in real time, manifestos and different things like that, and fulfilling their whatever their crime they're committing. A lot of Snapchat, a lot of this stuff. But I'm gonna tell you something right now when it comes to law enforcement. Um, and some may disagree with me if you're some of the old timers out there. Uh, Law enforcement is smarter than they've ever been before as a profession. And the way you got to look at it is this way. When we came up, you had to go, if you needed to fact check something, you had to go check out a book.
Mhm.
There was no internet. These kids today can hit Google or Siri and they have answers in seconds. They research everything. They really do. Now, whether it's right or wrong, whatever they're getting or where their sources are, they're smarter than they've ever been. So having these police officers come in, they understand technology, they understand how to research, they understand how to do these things with technical, computers and phones is important because that's how we're solving crime now is through that electronic footprint.
Wow.
Whereas before you couldn't teach an old dog new tricks. It was a typewriter. When you put a MS-DOS computer in front of them and they had to type all of a sudden, it was very difficult transition for probably all professions, but particularly for law enforcement because we've always handwritten everything. So it's technology has been a challenge in the aspect that people can commit crimes and whatnot, but we're also solving the crimes through the electronic footprint.
Like most things, it's pros and cons,
Yep.
right? Just that I just kind of coming full circle back to the children. But yeah, they are smarter. This generation, I mean, I was just helping my mom clean out some bookcases and the National Geographics that we had.
Encyclopedias.
Yes, encyclopedias. Those are old commodities. I mean, they're not applicable anymore to this generation. But it's just interesting to see the influence of this newest generation coming up and how that's going to continue to affect, from a social standpoint, from law enforcement all the way to real estate. It is influence, and we just have to learn how to adapt to it.
Well, you're right. You're exactly right. I remember the first time I was being videotaped by somebody's cell phone on a traffic stop. It was probably 15, 20 years ago. And I walked up and they're videotaping me and I'm like, yeah, I didn't know. I kind of went vapor lock. I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
But I knew I couldn't do anything about it because we were in a public place. But it was just very odd for me to see that. But then I realized this is going to be the norm. So now we just tell them, hey, we're recording you too. So
yeah, just like every time I show a property, I have to tell people before we go in, just assume that you're on camera and the sellers are hearing everything that you're saying.
Funny you say that. I went to the house I bought, had cameras in it, and I walked in and I purposely was talking to the cameras. I was like, I really want your washer and dryer. Can we throw that into the deal? And I actually did get the washer and dryer in the deal. So I really did that. It was fun.
Oh, good. Maybe I should try that. I haven't tried that tactic of actually talking directly to them.
I was pointing at it, talking to us. I really like
this is what I want, and this is what I love that. Well, good. We will have to try it. You had made mention of Chief Reynolds and the influence and mentorship that he had with you. Elaborate on that with me, if you will.
So Chief Reynolds was a late Charleston police chief who just passed away. He lost his battle with cancer. And he came to us from Montgomery County, Maryland, where he was a deputy chief. And he was only here for, I think, 5 or 7 years. But what a tremendous impact he had on not just his department at the City of Charleston Police Department, but other local law enforcement agencies. He really was a collaborator. He was someone who just, what a great speaker and mentor. And he would show up at something and just bring both sides together. And so it's a tremendous loss to see someone so physically strong and well fit, who was a runner, who was very athletic, fight the good fight, and he passed away. So obviously, on behalf of Summerville Police Department and town of Summerville, we'd like to, say we're sorry for the loss of Chief Reynolds to his police department and most importantly, his family, because he really did have a big impact on me and the other law enforcement officers in the Low Country.
Sure. Throughout the Low Country, he's been honored. So thank you for bringing that up.
Cool.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I think we've learned from a different viewpoint about our town, a lot of the benefits that Summerville has to offer for our community and how integrated the police force is here. So thank you for your service and thank you for joining us today.
You're so sweet. I appreciate it. If I could say one thing.
Yeah, please.
If you see Summerville police officers, say hello to them. Force them out of their comfort zone. If they're not saying hello to you, say hello to them. We have some of the best people on the planet working here and living here. I encourage you, if you're not living here, to look to live here. Certainly, you'll be safe. Yeah.
On that note, there was a recent, I got a little distracted, let's say, at a stop sign, didn't come to a complete stop. The police officer had every right to pull me over, and she did. I had never known her before, but she came up, did her duty, and I did walk away with a traffic violation ticket. Well, I paid the sucker. As soon as I could online, I jumped on, get it knocked out so you don't forget it, right? Next thing I know, I see her in the local coffee shop that our friend Brad Mallett owns. And I walked up to her and I said, I just wanted to really formally introduce myself to you. And we had a great conversation right there. Really, I was going to pay for their coffee, but they had already they had already gotten what they needed. But since then, I've seen her at the Summerville farmers market. I've seen her at different
I know who you're
times,
talking
and
about.
now she'll give me a big warm hug.
Nice.
And she was
That's
doing
cool.
her job, right? And there was no fault in that. I needed the friendly reminder. Thankfully, I got it in the form of a coupon and not a fender bender. But that's the style of community that we live in. That
Well, even you being brave to go up to her. I mean, what a bigger person you are than that's cool.
well, it's saying hi. It's saying, just here's my name, and you're a community member. I'm a community member. We get to both love on this town.
Well, I'll
So,
tell you a quick story. I know you're trying to end it. There's two people who are community members who you all will know, and I will not say their names, that when they were younger, they had interactions with me as a police officer. It makes me feel old now because they're now older and they're community members, and they remind me all the time about my interactions I had with them when they were younger running the streets. So
I bet you could tell some tales around this
we
town.
won't tell you details. So thank you
All
for
right.
having me.
Well, you bet. Thank you for joining us
Yes, ma'am.
today.